welcome. Today's session right now is called Housing Possibilities, Exploring Options. Innovative housing options that support aging and community are emerging throughout the nation. Learn about universal design features, cooperative householding, and a network to connect with others for home sharing. And we're so honored and lucky to have such fabulous thought leaders and innovators that are working so hard in our community to make it the best community to live in and age. And with that, I'm going to introduce Dr. Kathy Black, who is a professor, College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences at the University of South Florida, Sarasota, Manatee. And we are very honored to have you here, and she's going to introduce the rest of our panel. So thank you, Dr. Black.
Thank you. Welcome to our session, everybody. And does this sound okay, or it sounds loud to me? So for those of you who don't know, an age-friendly community addresses a lot of community features: transportation, housing, outdoor spaces, employment, volunteering opportunities, activities, health services, communication information. And housing is one of the big ones throughout the nation. I actually just did a session with Age-Friendly New York City, Age-Friendly Chicago, Age-Friendly DC, and Age-Friendly San Francisco. And we were there as well. And if you think we have affordable housing issues here, San Fran, DC, okay, and New York, hello. So obviously these are issues that people aging all over the nation are experiencing. And so we have some innovative things that are happening right here in this community and that have the potential to be happening even more. And we want to share it. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guests who are experts in their areas. But the first thing I want to mention is our wonderful guest, Tracy Lux, who was on our schedule to be here today, is unable to be with us. But we are so fortunate to have Larry Hale, who's with the Universal Design Coalition. And Larry, I'm going to have you say a few words. I want them to know a little bit about you. And then I want you to tell them a little bit about universal design.
Okay. My background is I'm a registered architect, and I've been in Sarasota since '85 dealing with custom residences, both new and renovated, and sustainable design for most of that time. And really, universal design or aging in place is about sustainable design. How do you stay in your home longer? So I've done that. The discussion about universal design or aging in place has been a topic in Sarasota for a long time. We really, if you look at the history of where Universal Design Coalition came from continuing the conversation and then moved through the Institute for the Ages. And we're one of the circles that when that closed, we stayed together and became a registered nonprofit.
So Larry, can you tell them a little bit about what universal design is and why it's important?
Well, I'd start with probably why it's important. Because if you're like me, if you're like my parents, they wanted to stay in their home. You've spent a lot of time there. It's comfort, it's security. So you want to be able to stay in your home. The challenge with is a lot of homes haven't been built for it. The doors aren't quite wide enough. Whether it's a walker, wheelchair, some kind of mobility challenge. Surfaces, carpets are not that friendly to keeping me from tripping. Falls is a big issue as we age. So there's surfaces, there's elements in your home that probably, or at least sometimes aren't thought about on the front end. And we also went through a stage where a lot of people, oh, I'm going to build or buy something new when I need it again. And I think we're seeing a change in that, where we want to stay in the existing home we're in longer. So there's ways to retrofit your home. There's elements you can change. Or you can, if you are building or doing something new, there's things you can ask for as you build or move to something more.
So universal design elements allow you to have a lifelong home. A home that will meet your needs if you should, God forbid, end up in a wheelchair or a walker and need that wider door space. It is no or little cost difference at the time of building to have that. And so, of course, we want that at the front end, and Sarasota County has recently passed a resolution to encourage builders in Sarasota County by fast-track permitting and allowing them to do that. However, that's only going to be helpful for some new housing stock. for retrofitting our homes, it's, I think many of us face the issues. We're looking for, you know, grab bars and enough leverage inside the wall that you can have the grab bar. A doorknob, a lever that's good for an arthritic hand, but it's also good for somebody holding groceries or a child. So these are modifications that are, in many cases, are no cost difference. Larry is part of this movement in this community. And Larry, can you also share with them your plans for Universal Design Center?
Well, we've been looking at how do we demonstrate or how do we provide something that so anybody can come and look and see some of the ideas. So we're working towards either a design center or something we can take to events like this. So we're working so that, you know, you can just walk in and see and it becomes a reality. Plus, if we, you know, you always want to know what it costs. And we go back to when, oh, we're going to build green. Well, that's going to be this much more. That wasn't reality. You know, so there's ideas out there, it's expensive, but it really isn't. So we're trying to put that together and get it better documented so that when people are asking, okay, I need to widen this door, what's it going to cost? We can be, you know, have some documentation of where you should expect. You know, for instance, when we think about green, which has been about 20 years, and I kind of think we're Universal Design's following that to some degree. You know, first was, oh, that's 25% more. Well, no, it's 3 to 7%. That's what now we have documentation to say. So we're combating that too, I would say, to get it to the reality of what it really costs to change.
And the Universal Design Coalition, which is a group of builders and architects, and they're looking to create a actual showcase, a place where we can go, because people are visual. They like to see products. And by the way, these products today are reasonably priced. They're at Home Depot and Lowe's, but people don't know where to reach for them on the shelves. And this would be an opportunity for all of us builders, as well as homeowners, to be educated about what will make your home work for you. We heard from a lot of people in our community that their homes, you know, they've got steps that they can no longer navigate, or that their kitchen is not going to work for them. People need a seat height counter. Again, God forbid you end up needing to be in a wheelchair. And so how will your home work for you to be a lifelong home? This community has told us they want to stay where they are. So what can we do to help people? So the Universal Design is one way to stay in the home, and there are features, and we'll take some questions on this in just a few minutes. I'd like to move now to another innovative opportunity for aging as well, to help support living at home as well. And I want to talk about Jeanette Waitling-Mills, who is let me get her up on the board there. She is a co-facilitator of the Living in Community Network and a treasurer also active with the Universal Design Coalition. And Jeanette's been in Sarasota for over 30 years. She has a Bachelor's of Fine Arts at North Carolina at Greensboro. And she also has a window business on the side. And she's, well, she's really a Renaissance woman. She does it all, this lady, and she's a wonderful person as well. So she's also a certified SCORE member, and so many things about Jeanette. But Jeanette is very active with this Living in Community Network. And so let's let you hear about what this is, how you can be a part of this, and the benefits to you. Go ahead, Jeanette.
Thanks, Kathy. Okay, the communities movement is a pretty national movement, and there are a lot of organizations that talk about this. The Fellowship of International Communities, Neighbors Gathering, and of course the Co-Housing Organization. These are all national organizations that discuss the concept of community. Locally, the Living in Community Network, we're a local grassroots movement, and we try and connect people of like mind and shared values for the purposes of creating sustainable community lifestyle. We provide education, and we do workshops and hold conferences. As a matter of fact, today, 3 of the 4 original founding members of Living in Community Network are here. Our communications person, Shell Siskin, who's back there with her camera, and Linda Williams, who, wave Linda, and Linda is our I don't know, I guess she also does a lot of communication stuff. So, and our fourth founding member, Tracy Lux, is not with us today.
Right.
So anyway, we started back in 2010, and we had a half-day conference, and the interest was so great that the next year we did a full-day conference. We brought in some national speakers. It was great. It was a huge amount of work, and all four of us.
Excuse me. So sorry.
It's okay.
I apologize.
All four of us decided, well, we really had day jobs, so we no longer do the big conferences. Instead, we have gone into having smaller events. We try and have 1 or 2 social events each year to just let people who have an interest in community housing to connect with each other. We have sponsored speakers on co-housing, on universal design. We've sponsored speakers to tell us how to downsize. We have worked with the 5 Wishes documents. And of course, we have a series of classes on shared housing, which is something that most people find really interesting. But I'll get back to that in a minute. We do promote community in 3 different ways. We look at 3 main paths to having community. The big elaborate one is co-housing. And this is a Danish concept that literally people get together who decide that they have like values, shared interests, and they want to form a community. So you get a core group together, you actually hire a developer and build a community from the ground up. It's a fascinating concept. It usually takes about 10 years from start to finish. You've got to have a few burning souls that'll really work through that. We really haven't had any co-housing communities get off the ground in Florida. There are a lot of them in North Carolina and Colorado and on the West Coast, but for some reason it just hasn't caught on in Florida. The second path to community that we talk about a lot is actually forming community where you live. Just a really strange concept. Get to know your neighbors. I mean, go knock on their door and say hi. If you really want to have a cohesive community, then be the one that steps up and says, we're having a potluck. This is the day, this is the time. And you can't just do it once, you have to do it again and again. This is kind of the path that I've chosen. As a matter of fact, a couple of my neighbors are here today. So we have a pretty cohesive community in that we have regular outings to go to dinner or have potlucks or have various parties. And it's really nice to know that the people that are next door, you can count on them if you really need the help. And it's just easy to do. It just takes a little bit of effort on your part. The third path that everybody really loves the idea of is Golden Girls housing, is shared housing. You know, we all watched, Blanche and Rose and Dorothy and Sophia and went, oh, what a wonderful way to live. It's a little hard to find 4 women who can share a house. and it's also hard to find a house with 4 bedrooms with 4 private bathrooms. So what we see more of here is that 2 people share a house. There's so many advantages to doing this. You think about it and you go, oh my God, this is great. I really want to do it. And then you say, well, how do I start? Is it safe? What if it doesn't work out? How am I going to find somebody compatible to live with? So, that's where Living in Community Network comes in. We offer a class. It's a 3-part class that we do every year. That we have a workbook that one of our friends, members, has written that is just excellent to guide you through finding another compatible person to live with. It isn't just, oh, we went to coffee together, she's great, I really like her, we're going to move in. It's a lot more work than that. It's as much work as finding a mate. I mean, this is somebody that you're going to share living space with. It is important that you work through all of the big issues. And I jotted my notes so that I don't forget to. So cleanliness. Cleanliness is a big deal. You know, do you think your house needs cleaning once a week or once a month? It's a big issue that that you kind of need to work out. What about the noise level? I'm really bad about leaving my TV running all the time. I like that noise in the background. There are other people who like the serenity, just total quiet. So that's important stuff. Vices. What are your vices? Smoking, drinking, drugs. These are things that you really need to discuss and find out about another person. Food. Are you going to share a kitchen? Do you cook? Do they cook? Are you going to share meals? Are you going to each do your own thing? Are you a vegetarian? Do they have to be a vegetarian? These are all things to discover about each other. Temperature is another biggie. My friends here are laughing because we have the cold girl and the hot girl here. It's like we love each other, but we could never share a house because we'd be fighting at the thermostat all the time. Another biggie is pets. Are you going to have pets in your house? Or are you not going to have pets? Are you allergic to pets? Then finances. That's another biggie. If you are going to share expenses, do both of you have a stable source of income? What would happen if that were interrupted? The other thing to consider is one of the models that we've seen work very well throughout the country is where a senior teams with a younger person, even a college student, and so the student gets a lower price on their housing in return for helping the senior with their chores, doing grocery shopping, driving after dark. All of these things can work out to be wonderful. And I'm like,
no, yeah, I think this is.
And I'm going. I can obviously I can talk about
and
this
she didn't
forever.
talk about dating either.
Oh no, that's another.
But I think that you're getting
Right.
the thinking that goes into this, and I'm telling you that shared housing is becoming much more common. We heard in our community, particularly, it is of interest for women living alone, women who are widowed. And it is an immediate cost savings. And there are many health and social benefits to living with someone, even if it's a more sort of, you got your space, I got my space, so there's still many benefits. We're going to come to our questions in just a moment, because I expect a lot of questions, because housing is a hot topic. But I'd like to introduce our third guest. And I am very, very proud, and Sarasota is very, very fortunate to have living in our community Karen Bush. Karen also has a roommate, Louise Machinist. Is Louise here today, or?
Housemate.
Housemate.
No, she's not. She's at a convention somewhere.
Oh, okay. So we don't have Louise. I love Louise as well. And Karen is tremendous personal experience in cooperative householding. So it's a little bit different than what you just heard a moment ago, where two or more unrelated adults co-own a home or condo and share the costs, living expenses, and also have fun living together and have a wonderful life. And Karen's going to tell us more about this, but I want to say right up front that I have read her book. I love her book, and I share it everywhere I can because, it is a Bible for how to make this work. Because any one of these things are deal breakers in living together, you know that. And so Karen, please tell us more.
I think, am I on for those? Okay. I think I'm the monkey in the cage for you to see as an example of shared housing and of universal design. I have lived in a shared housing situation continuously since 2004. 2012 census shows that in the United States, 27% of Americans live alone. Over a quarter of our population lives alone. Some of those people want that. Some of those people choose to live themselves, and in 2004, I was one of those. I had bought a little house. I had I was very happily divorced, I must say. I had bought a little house, I'd renovated it a bit, I had a fabulous career, I had a great future, I was in my mid-50s. And given all of that, I was, I had great social life, all of that, but I thought, when I'm in my 70s or 80s or 90s, this might not be such a good arrangement. I could see myself, as an introvert, becoming isolated, lonely, maybe depressed. I could see a future that maybe was not so bright. So I got the idea of sharing a house with other friends, and I reached out to two people I knew from my church, people I respected but did not know that well, invited them to my house for an official consultants flip chart meeting about retirement. So 2004, we were talking about something a decade or more in the future. At the end of that meeting of talking about what we wanted in retirement and the possibility of shared housing, one of my friends said, "This is such a brilliant idea and sounds like so much fun and is so practical from a social and financial basis. Why not now?" That was April 2004. May 2004, we bought a house, a big 4-story colonial, not designed for retirement or older. Winding staircases, all of that. But we knew that this was not going to be permanent. We knew that this was going to be something like a 5 to 10-year experiment. We had legal documents to cover all kinds of things, such as no guest may stay more than 21 days in a year and no more than 7 consecutive nights. Why? Let's keep boyfriends from moving in, children from moving in, because my housemates had grown children, or one of us being a really good Samaritan and bringing in someone from the street who needed a temporary home who then moved in permanently. So we had all kinds of legal arrangements about what would happen if one of us wanted to exit, if someone developed psychiatric problems and we had to deal with them. We had a particular type of ownership agreement that protected our equity in the house. So as Jeanette is saying, we did some very careful planning because that meeting was in April, we bought a house in May, and we did some rapid fire planning and writing of legal agreements, and we moved in August, even though the newly refinished floors had not dried. So we moved in, and I was going to cover points Jeanette's covered beautifully. There's maybe one other I would add, and that is, you mentioned financial stability. I would say a shared housing arrangement, particularly co-ownership, is for people who themselves are pretty stable. If you're seeking to save somebody else from a very difficult situation, that's probably not the best arrangement for a shared housing. You want people who are pretty much stable on their own, socially, personally, financially. Their families can be a mess as long as they're okay. And I would say there's another, and that is people who have a clear sense of responsibility. We had very few rules in our community. There were 3 of us, my 2 friends and I, but we didn't need them because we were out of milk. Someone would notice and someone would buy it. We shared a checking account that covered all of the costs for the house. All of us cut our costs for housing by 1/3. What did we do with that? It went into retirement. So our retirements are much nicer than they would have been without that additional savings of 11 years. So for 11 years, we lived that way. But this was not forever. And we hit about 8 years into it, and I'm just one of those people who's always looking at the future. So I began to think, okay, our knees are beginning to go and we've got 4 flights of stairs. Where do I want to be? Like the rest of you, I chose Sarasota probably for the same reasons. One of them was walkability. I invited my two housemates to join me here. One is very close to her family where we lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and she chose to stay there to be with her family. The other one said, sure, why not? So we moved down here, and now comes in universal design. We bought a condo that was in bad shape. It had not been touched since about 1970, and it needed to be renovated. So, having learned about universal design, we set about creating a place where she had her private suite at one end, I had my private suite at one end. Everything in between is shared. It's one floor, has an elevator, it's in a condo building, sits right on Sarasota Bay, because remember, we saved a bunch of money. And we've installed non-slip floors. You don't notice they're non-slip, but they're non-slip. All of the levers all the handles are levers. People walk in my bathroom and they say, ooh, this is exotic. It's exotic because I put in some aging in place features, such as a cascading tile waterfall that swirls around the drain. Why? Because if I ever have visual problems, or my housemate does, that gives you a visual clue to where you ought to be. The water handles are separate from where the water pours down on you, so you don't have scalding water. You step out of the water to adjust the temperature. There are 100 things like that. We can answer them if you have any questions, or I can talk with you later. But I can tell you, one of the things that we've also done, 3 people was very easy for us to live with in shared housing. 2, I find more difficult, because you get into the, with a third person, there's always that moderating influence. And from time to time, we've called Jean and asked her to be a moderating influence between Louise and me. But one thing we did, and you might think about this, if you go into a housing relationship with 2 people, we agreed on a couple of things. Number 1, I got the bedroom on the bay because I found the condo. She got the other end, which is pretty nice. But the second one was that we would have different social circles. We would lead independent lives. My example at the time was, if we both want to join a book club, Louise, you join one book club, I'll join another. If it meets at our place, you're welcome to join that group. But let's have different social circles, and we have worked, we moved down here to 2015. We have worked very hard at establishing separate but somewhat overlapping social circles, and it has been a very smart thing to do. So since 2004, I have had a fabulous time living with other friends with similar values, but having my own independent life as well.
Well, all 3 of our, we're going to take questions, but I've been to Karen and Louise's home, and the universal design elements are, it's a beautiful home. It's really a showcase too. It really is.
Jeanette's done a lot too.
Yeah.
Jeanette too. I have not been to Jeanette's yet.
Well, I'll have you over.
But this is a really important conversation for our community. You heard we've got about 40,000 people 60 and over living alone. Many people will not be able to continue manage living alone or continue to afford living in that home. Not everybody's got a communal mind, not everybody wants to share. We were all brought up independent, get that. But for those who are interested, these are options that are out there, and these are some of the ways that we can do this. So we'd like to have some questions for our guests. Yeah, I want to just, I'm not sure how many people are aware of this issue of isolation. Have you been reading about this in the paper, about some people who end up isolated? It's now considered a risk factor as high as smoking for mortality. It is not good to be roughing it alone when you eventually, if and when you eventually need help. These are the sorts of innovations that allow you to manage in that home so that you can live fully and so that you can have companionship as well. Any interest, any questions for, yes?
How do you get more information about all this, and that's for sale.
There's a book. And Chelsea, do you have our flyers here?
Yeah.
Okay. You can either stop by our Living in Community Network booth, or Shells is right here. She has flyers. We have a social event coming up in December, and then, as I said, we're doing a series of classes. It's a 3-month class on how to find an appropriate housemate.
And it's really, a website and,
Right,
it's an e-connection, but then you can choose to partake in some of the activities,
Right.
So that you've got things to do and people to be with. 2/3 of people in Florida come from somewhere else. We don't have the roots with each other that we have, and community is about us.
Yes.
It's about people and being, and how many of us do not know our neighbors? And so these are some of the things that will make our lives more enriched, to not be roughing it alone if we don't want to or need to. Yes, we have a question over here.
Yeah, I do. You're talking about women all the time now. Can you get into like the mixed relationships or just for men?
Sure. Well,
does it work?
Yes. The first thing I will say is, you guys tend to die off and leave us. So if you look at most events, look around here and you'll see.
And the majority of men are able to
Yes,
remarry.
we do, as a matter of fact, I think it's Atlanta, there's a living in community group that formed, that's headed by a man. And so there are a number of, then it's a non-romantic relationship. It's strictly platonic. And yeah, that can work because,
Does it exist? I understand.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Does it exist?
Yes, it
Yes,
exists.
yes. So
Yeah.
Kathy mentioned New York City, and in major metropolitan areas now, younger people,
Right.
there's kind of two humps
Yeah.
in the demographics. Those of us over 60 and those of us who are in their 30s and 20s and 30s. In New York City, it's becoming increasingly popular for people either to rent a place and share it or to own a place and share it. So you find 5 or 6 younger people. I know of an instance in which 2 of those people are a couple and the rest are single men and women. They're all young professionals, but they cannot afford New York City. We know of a group in Australia where 3 couples wanted to retire together. And if you read their story, they have a book called The Shedders. I read their book and I said to Louise, did they read our book before they wrote theirs? And the answer was no. But the story's the same, except for 3 couples.
There's a silvernest.com. It's .com, right?
Yeah.
Or is it yeah. Silvernest.com. It might be .org. Please, I apologize. It's now a national movement for those people who want to rent out a room to a younger person, and again, at a discounted rate in exchange for some bartering.
Right.
You can do the housework or do the groceries or help with something. And silvernest.com is an opportunity for people who have an extra room to rent and are looking for that. And that intergenerational exchange is not a bad thing. Now, again, you want to be careful of who you have, and we this balance between protecting very vulnerable people and also trusting people, and also the compatibility issues. There needs to be some issues that are shared in advance, as you're hearing here. But these options are emerging, and it needs to be more than just home, assisted living, and nursing home. And we need to create those here. There are village-like movements. They're not yet happening here. Living in community is a version that's not quite to the extent of some, but these are the sorts of things we want to start seeing in our community, and we want to start sharing with our community so that you know that these options exist. And again, for the future, 1 out of 3 boomers are single.
Right.
So we're looking for different ways to live in our community. Yes?
I'm a teacher. What advice and what help do you have if you want to redo an existing home?
Well, the Universal Design Coalition has members that can come and advise you, for one. the local and national builder association. They actually train. It's a CAPS, or certified aging in place specialist. We have a contractor in our group, but there's others around the area, so they've taken the classes on it. But get some advice, walk through. Kathy mentioned that the county, Sarasota County, passive visitability and universal design. There's a checklist on the county website that you can look, and basically it's a checklist that if you were building new, or that one is typically for building new, that you'd get some kind of quicker permitting. But it's also a good checklist of how do you make your home visitable, so either you can have friends come and visit you, or maybe your friends are doing it so you can visit them. But it's a nice checklist. That's a good starting point. Universal Design Coalition has a website. There's information and resources there. So there's a lot of resources available. Just ask.
If you contact us at info@agefriendlysarasota.org, we can also share with you the checklist, so it's easy. And also, if you have a few minutes, ARP has got a home fit guide. It is fantastic. It was developed by occupational therapists who know everything to help you plan for your longevity in that home. They're right out here in the outside booth, and it's tremendous information. Another question?
Okay. Maybe it's just a reminder. If you want to learn how to, what works for you, what boundaries you have,
Yes.
come join us on
Yes.
the workshops. Thanks,
Right.
Janelle.
Yes.
Very smart idea.
Last minute pitch.
You were busy handing out the flyers.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me. I live in a gated community, and part of their bylaws, I don't know the exact verbiage, but it prevents people from living together without the same family name or some relationship.
Yeah, the deed restricted communities, it's funny because it's not really a county or city zoning issue, it's a deed restricted community issue.
Yeah, okay. I do, and in most of the ones that I've seen, you can't rent out a portion of your house. But if you have a friend who chooses to live with you and share household expenses, you're not renting out a room, you're, you know, I mean, it's the same way, you know, if you were a couple but weren't married, it's the same thing, even if you're, you know, just friends.
Do you think that stipulation could be challenged in court today? As far
Anything
as
can be challenged. But there is no county, the county ordinance, I believe, is four unrelated adults can share living quarters.
Right, but you're bringing up a very
Right.
important point, and those regulations are different from community to community. Where we lived in Pittsburgh, we had heard that we might not be able to, the three of us might not be able to live together, buy a house, because there was a zoning regulation that stipulated that no more than 2 women could live together in a house, because that would make it a brothel. It turned out to be an urban legend, and we did not create a brothel.
Well, I want to just say that there's a lot of innovation happening. There are now, for those of you who are Jimmy Buffett fans, there are 2 Margaritavilles.
Oh, yeah. Margaritavilles.
2 Margaritavilles, and one in Florida and one in North Carolina.
One in Bradenton. There's one coming up in Bradenton.
And one in North Carolina being planned for right now. There are now rock and roll houses where people are connecting and living together beyond, just beyond a shared apartment. So you're getting people who are figuring out how to make this work for them in living with their artists banding together, LGBT banding together. So these are the new innovations that are happening all around the nation, and there's some wonderful information we can share with those of you who are really interested in looking at this. And we are at the end of our time. So we're going to move out to the outside if there's any specific questions for our 3 guests here, and thank you so much.
Or we both have groups that you can stop by.
Okay. Oh, and they have booths here also, yes.
Yeah.